Hello and welcome to the Alliance Pro Wrestling Network Sunday special interview. Very excited today because my guest today is an ECW original. He's wrestled for the NWA, WWF. He's wrestled in Japan. Very happy to welcome to the show, C.W. Anderson. Welcome to the show, C.W.
Hey, man. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure, man. My pleasure, man. I know before we started, before I hit record, you mentioned you got injured last night. Are you okay? And what happened?
Yeah, I was just wrestling this young guy last night, and it's one of those where they wrestle a name guy, and I get it. When I was young, our first guys I wrestled like Ricky Morton. I was really nervous, and he was off, really off, and we went to do a shoulder tackle, and I told him when I throw you off, I said I'm coming, and I don't think he expected this 50-year-old guy to move as quick as he can in the ring still. And when I tried to run over top of him, he didn't bump, so his forehead collided and smashed my ear and split the inside of my ear. And I actually thought it had busted my eardrum because my ear immediately filled with blood and I was kind of off. And I was already battling the deal with coming back. I flew to Boca Raton, Florida a couple of days ago, my fiance and I, when we come back, the cabin pressure and the weather changed from 90 degrees to 50 degrees here in North Carolina. So the right side of my ear, I got an earache on the right side. Now I got this side.
Gosh.
So yeah, I got it all going on, man.
Oh gosh, man! But so you still move pretty quickly for a 50-year-old. You said you're pretty fast.
Yeah, that's what I had. A few of the guys in Florida, they told me afterwards. A few of the owners, they said, we didn't know what to expect with you coming up here or down here because your age, you've been wrestling forever, but like Jesus, man, you can still go. I got this. You still got it chant, and one of the other owners called the other owner while we were at dinner. He said, there's one thing that's true. He said, damn, C.W. Anderson can still wrestle. He can still get it.
Okay. We're the same age. I'm 51 and I'm not very fast. I'm still very, very slow. So you're a lot faster than I am, man. All right, cool, man. So just curious. So how did it all start for you? What got you interested in pursuing a career in professional wrestling?
When my baseball career kind of fell by the wayside, I was this highly recruited baseball player. And things didn't really pan out like I thought it to, especially when I blew my elbow out, showing my arm off. And everybody that knows my backstory knows I wasn't a fan of professional wrestling when I was growing up. And it wasn't until I was like age of 14 that I started watching it. But I never thought I would get into professional wrestling. And I kind of did it when I was like 16 years old. And this guy's backyard. He had a ring set up and he was an independent wrestler. He trained a bunch of us high school kids and we just kind of rolled around and put on shows for the families, just little things like that. And then my baseball coach put a stop to that. He's like, look, you don't want to injure yourself. You got a very promising baseball career. So it wasn't until after baseball went by the wayside and I got a real job. I saw a friend of mine at McDonald's one day that I wrestled with back then. And he's a few years older than I. Asked him what he was doing. And he told me he was still wrestling. I was like, you still wrestling in the backyard? He's like, no, we do like armories and high schools and things like that. He says, as a matter of fact, we got one here in Zebulon tonight, and that was the town that we were in that day. I saw him at the McDonald's, and he said, come by, man, come early. He said, we'll get in the ring, roll around, and see if you still like it. And so I got there early. We rolled around, and man, I was hooked. And you couldn't get me out of the ring after that.
All right, so you were a catcher, right? I read that you were drafted by the San Diego Padres as a catcher. Did you ever get to play? Did you ever get to play for the Padres, or you were just in the minor leagues?
No, I didn't even make it that far, man. When I got drafted, I was one of these little country kids that, for me, what my mom said was the gospel. I really believed a lot. And she was like, go to school, the pros will always be there. She was that mother hen that didn't want me to leave. So I kind of listened to her and said, I should have went for the pros. Even though the money was crap. This was before the Latin explosion. The catchers come through before they started paying well. Padres only were going to offer me $20,000 with a $2,000 signing bonus. So it wasn't nothing. So I never got that far. So I went to college and was a catcher in college and was showing my arm off because I tell people that I could sit on my knees and throw it to second base at 90 miles an hour. It'd never get 3-4 foot off the ground. Could throw it over left field fence and it never threw an arc. It'd be almost like on a straight line. I had a cannon and I was your typical white guy catcher. I couldn't run for crap. I had a good bat, but yeah, nothing ever panned out of that. I wish it would have, because it seems like the guy they drafted after me, Brad Osmus, He's in the Hall of
Okay.
Fame now.
Oh
So
yeah, no, it's a
yeah,
very yeah. I know him very well. I know him very
yeah.
well. Yeah. So so the Andersons, a very very famous name in the world of professional wrestling. Who approached you about you becoming an Anderson, and how did you initially feel about becoming an Anderson? And was there pressure because it's such a legendary family?
It was December 4th, 1993 was my very first match in that little after I did a little bit of training, they put me in the ring under a hood, and there was a couple guys there at the show doing the Anderson gimmick. It was Pat Connors and Rocky Mules. They had gotten the Anderson name from Gene, who legitimately is the only real Anderson. And Rocky was about my age now at the time. You know, I was 23 at the time. Rocky was about 50, and Pat was about in his mid 30s, and Pat was looking for somebody to tag with. So they saw me, even though I didn't have a beard, I had a goatee and a little bit of hair. I looked more like the big boss man than I did an Anderson. Okay. And Pat approached me about becoming one. You know, Rocky's getting ready to retire. I want a tag partner. Would you be interested in doing it? I was like, yeah, man, that sounds kind of fun, because I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know what I was going to call myself. So he said, you know, you can't disrespect the name. You can't job it out. There was all these little criteria of being an Anderson because Gene gave him permission. He said, just, you know, try to come up with a 3-letter name, because, you know, it had Pat, and then there was Ollie and Arn. He said, we're just going to try to keep that going. So, man, for 2 weeks, I couldn't come up with crap. I come up with Ike and Cal. And just so happened, the little independent show that I did, the guy that was a manager there was my longtime baseball coach. And I've known Randy, his name's Randy Driver. I've known Mr. Randy my entire life. And I was sitting there talking with him. I said, Mr. Randy, I can't come up with a name. I've come up with this. He said, that don't work. He said, just use your initials. We'll call you CW. So it just kind of stuck and just took off from there.
Did you say you had to get Gene Anderson's permission to use the Anderson name?
Gene give Pat and Rocky permission before he passed away. And it was whoever they saw fit that could carry the Anderson name with respect. Okay. And they saw that in me. Sorry, it's my wallet's barking.
It's okay.
But that's what they thought. They thought it was that I could carry it. And man, you know, I never liked the Andersons growing up because I was always a good guy person. You know, I liked Dusty Rhodes and Magnum TA, but you know, it wasn't until I started learning the gimmick to realize what a craft and what a technician Arn was.
It's funny you said you were never a fan of the Andersons. When I was growing up as a kid, I used to watch Georgia Championship Wrestling, and the big turn, Ole Anderson turning on Dusty Rhodes. I asked my dad to, because I was living in New York, I asked my dad to drive me down to Atlanta so I could get Ole Anderson. I wanted to get Ole Anderson for what he was doing for what he did to Dusty Rhodes, man. So did you ever meet Ole or Arn Anderson?
I met Ole during my early years in Japan. High Spots Wrestling brought him in to do a spot with me to give me the Anderson name. They like to give permission to give his thumbs up. And Ole was such a bitter ass that day. He was so bitter. And I really didn't want to do it with him. He didn't want to get in the ring. Hold on one second. Let me let this heifer outside. Just keep rolling. I won't take but a second.
Okay.
I really apologize.
That's okay. CW will be right back. He says,
yeah, I'm coming right back. Yeah, my Rottweilers, they see the Amazon guy drive up.
I think every time you mentioned the name Ole Anderson, the dog was barking. So
she realizes evil.
Okay.
So yeah, when we did the thing, he was never got out of his chair. He was peddling his book, and it was just a miserable experience. And it wasn't until I got to WWE when they brought back that Disney version of ECW that I actually got to sit and talk with Arn about being the Anderson, because I was so respectful of Arn that when I went to the Power Plant, I didn't let many people know that I was running the Anderson gimmick, because I didn't want to get back to Arn, who's this damn kid that took the Anderson name.
Okay, did he give you his blessing though when you talked to him? Okay, that's good.
And even recently, up until a few years ago, when he was doing his podcast, somebody mentioned my name, and Arn said I was a hell of a talent. And he said, he said, CW is just as much of Anderson as I am. He said he does the name well, so I'm happy that he is one. So that's a high praise coming from Arn Anderson.
Okay, you mentioned WCW Power Plant. I was reading that J.J. Dillon and Paul Orndroff didn't think that you had what it takes to make it. Is that true? And when they told you that, did that give you more incentive to prove them wrong?
After I got through the initial shock and the little bit of depression of getting my feelings hurt from them,
Okay.
because I actually thought I was a good wrestler. And then, you know, I never looked the best. You know, I was around 250 then. You know, even my times at ECW up until the end, I was around 250, 260. So I was on the heavy side. And then they told me that they thought I was okay, but I didn't think I could have any kind of job at WCW because they weren't really wrestling. They were into marketing, and they didn't think I had a marketing look and could make it there. So after I got through the initial shock of being told that, it was, all right, well, damn, I'm gonna prove them wrong. You know, that was an incentive for me.
Yeah, and then did you go to ECW right away after that, or what led you to ECW?
One of my best friends at the time, his name's Curtis White. He wrestled as Toad, and anybody that watched the ending of WCW, he was tagging with PG-13 against the Young Dragons. They called him Frog.
Okay.
A few shows. So he got a tryout because his tag partner for the longest time was Lodi. Lodi was one of my students. Toad was one of my students. And of course, Lodi called in a favor from Raven. Raven called Dreamer. So it trickled up the ladder and Toad got a tryout. Well, it just so happens the night before, which was a Saturday, Toad and I wrestled the Public Enemy in South Carolina.
Okay.
And he drugged me down to Georgia with him for the tryout. I didn't really want to go. I wanted to go back home. He said, well, look, just come hang out, do a little politicking, because, you know, in wrestling, it's all about politicking. He said, get your name out there. You know, Karina's going to be there. You and Steve Corino are good friends. Worst case, you'll get to meet Steve or get to see Steve and hang out with him. So I went. And he did his little 5-minute tryout while we were standing around the ring. Nova, when he got done, Nova looked at me and asked me, like, Chris, you got your gear? I'm like, yeah, it's in the car. He said, well, run and get it. So I run and got my gear, put it on. I got in the ring with Simon Diamond, who was actually a friend of mine as well from being around North Carolina and the NWA stuff that Steve was running. And we did a little 5-minute deal, got out of the ring. Nova told me I had really good timing in there, and somebody from the bleachers yelled at Bill Alfonso, who was standing by the ring, and told Fonzie to get the ball guy back in the ring. So okay. Fonzie looks at me and goes, Daddy, he wants you back in the ring. Well, I look out there, it's Paul. Paul's sitting there with Taz and the Dudleys. And wow. I get back in the ring for like the next hour, man. He was throwing guys at me, and I was, you know, doing spots and things like that with them. And the doors are getting ready to open, and we get out of the ring. Everybody goes to the back, and I'm in the bathroom cleaning myself up before I was bumping so hard and hitting the turnbuckle so hard. I was actually bleeding from, I don't know what I was bleeding from. I was coughing up blood. By that time, the bathroom door opens, and it's Paul Heyman. And I still see him in that leather jacket and that hat. He walks straight up to me and sticks his hand out and says, hey, I'm Paul Heyman. It's nice to meet you. I said, hey, Paul, my name's Chris Wright. He said, CW, where are you wrestling at around here? I said, well, I'm a student at WCW Power Plant. He said, do they have you on contract there? I said, no, sir. I said, JJ Dillon and Paul Orndroff told me I wasn't, you know, WCW material, basically. And he said, well, what's your wrestling name? I said, CW Anderson. He goes, I knew it. He said, you look like Arn. You have the left punch, the spine buster. He goes, don't leave before I speak to you at the end of the night. I said, yes, sir. And he told me I was welcome to hang out backstage. So that's what I did. Show's getting close to start time. And Jim Molineau comes up to me and says, you're CW. I said, yes, sir. He said, Paul wants to see you in the back. So I go with him to the back. He's sitting in the locker room with Vito LaGrassa, who was Skull Von Crush, Danny Dorn and Roadkill. Introduces me to him, says, you're tagging with Vito, your third match. Welcome to ECW.
Wow, that's a great story. That's a great story, yeah. Man. So what were your initial thoughts of Paul Heyman after the first meeting? I'm sure you met with him after a number of times after that, but what were your initial thoughts on Paul Heyman?
I like Paul. You know, he was a genius with things, watching him run promos and storylines and stuff from the back. And, you know, I didn't get to, when we started traveling a little bit more, he was here and there, so I didn't get to see him as much. And, you know, we would do 4 shows on a loop, and sometimes I'd only wrestle once. And I kept telling him, hey, you give me the ball, I'm going to run with it now. And he's like, I know you are. He said, just give me time. So I did. And finally things started coming together, and I got to see how, in my mind, how brilliant he was with ideas and how he could turn stars out of nobody like myself. And, you know, my God, look at me, Chris Chetty, Danny Dorn, Roadkill, Balls Mahoney, Axel, guys like that don't really have a look, and then turn us into somebody. So
yeah, Absolutely. I mean, I grew up in Queens, New York. We're big ECW fans. Used to watch on MSG all the time. One thing I used to love about ECW was the crowd. The crowd was so devoted, so loud. What was it like wrestling in front of such a loud and devoted crowd, especially at the 2300 Arena?
Intimidating for somebody
Okay.
like me that's such an introvert and very shy. Is very, very intimidating. Once you know how that you've been. I'm sure you've been to shows and seen them to where you get out there. If they don't know who you are, they're gonna crap all over you. You got
Oh
to
yeah.
earn their respect, and it wasn't until I started making a name for myself that they started respecting my talent. And I remember my first live promo. They Paul threw me out at the ECW Arena at 2300. I couldn't talk. I was scared on the microphone and petrified. And it was the night Bobby Eaton came in the ring. And I remember standing there with Simon and Swinger and their little flunkies behind them, and I'm shaking in my boots because I'm scared to death to do a promo. And I knew if I bombed, the crowd was going to be all over me.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've been in a number of ECW crowds. I've been to a number of shows. Actually, I was at the show Elks Lodge. I was at a show. It was you and Simon and Swinger against Tommy Dreamer and the Dudley Boys. I was at that show.
That's the night Bubba beat the shit out of me.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask you, what do you remember about that show? I remember I was loud. I'll let you talk. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Yeah, you're exactly right. It was because that show was a little frustrating. I don't remember anything about it because Bubba beat the shit out of me.
Okay.
Like I don't remember it. He hit me so hard so many times that I didn't know who I was for 3 days. I don't remember any of the match. It wasn't until after like a week later that I got to watch it. Devon took care of me. He was great, even though his first clothesline wrapped around my head because I was so off. But it was so bad that I remember Jerry Lynn and Spike Dudley telling me afterwards they were back there watching it, screaming at Paul because I guess Paul put a hazing on me or something because I was going to be his next champ, whatever it was. But Bubba beat the shit out of me. People can go back and ever watch that match. They see how bad I was. The first time I tag out, when I think I tagged Simon, you see me crawl to Simon. I barely put my hand up, and then you see me collapse over the edge of the ring. I disappeared. I was so out of it. I don't remember. I know Bubba powerbombed me off the top rope. I don't remember that. I don't remember blading, none of that. But I do remember going back and looking at it, you know, and then the promo, the thing we did in the beginning with Joey and Christian, and then that's the night, you know, that's the time when Devon and Bubba came in and made the save, and they did something with Don Marie. I remember that was hot.
Yeah, I remember it being it was sad because it was the last show ever at the Elks Lodge, but it was I remember it was a great show. But you mentioned about taking those bumps. Were you worried that you're in ECW that you're gonna have to take some hard bumps? You have to take chair shots to the head. I've seen you take a few of those. Did that concern you at all?
Always.
Okay.
Yeah, it did. It did because you never know when you're gonna take the wrong one. I took some crazy bumps working with Super Crazy, working with Dreamer, working different guys. The chair shots were the worst, especially from Paul's. I dreaded taking those chair shots every night because Paul didn't want you to put your hands up. You know, most of my concussions came from balls and axle that I got.
Wow. How many concussions did you have, if I may ask?
Right now I'm at 23.
Holy smoke. Okay. Because I was watching the Super Crazy match that you have on your YouTube site last night, and he hit you pretty hard with that chair. I kind of felt it. I kind of cringed at that, but
yeah, that was Cincinnati, Ohio, because I remember my face bled like a spider web. I remember the picture I got, so it was like a spider web. I love that match. But I don't remember the chair shot hurting that bad because Crazy didn't go all the way through with it. Balls tried to compress your spine with it. And I remember one night he hit us really light and it folded the chair over my head. And he was just going crazy about how the chair folded on my head, over your head, and I didn't barely touch you. And, you know, Bill and Balls were really close. And he's like, he said, see, you fucking caveman, you ain't got to murder us every night with it. And I got to a point where Balls would zip tie the chairs together so they wouldn't open because he said the fans were so smart they realized that.
Yikes, man!
It was crazy.
Yeah, I could imagine, man. Did did Dudley's ever put you through a burning table? Did you ever go through one of those?
No. Luckily, I didn't have to do anything. The craziest I've had to do, and I didn't have to do it at ECW, was with barbed wire, and I did that in MLW with Stevens, Funk, and Simon. But yeah, I didn't, thank God I didn't have to do flaming tables.
Okay. In case anybody hasn't heard the story, can you share the story of New Jack stapling you in the nuts? You told I saw that. Yeah, I saw that yesterday. I thought it was a great story. Not sure if everybody knows about it, but maybe you want to share that story. That's
Yeah,
hilarious.
it's one of my funny stories with Jack. You know, New Jack and I are really close because Jack, he grew up in Greensboro, right? It's about an hour and a half, about a little over an hour from where I live at right now. And so Jack and I have always remained close. And we got real close at ECW. So we always like being in the ring together. So one night I had to wrestle Raven. I'm still with the Dangerous Alliance, but I had to wrestle Raven in a singles match. And for some reason, New Jack's going to do a run in. We're in Poughkeepsie, New York. And I do the match with Raven. I think Raven beats me. New Jack does a run in, and Jack and I wrestle. Well, the night before, Jack had wrestled Vic Grimes. Anybody knows he hated Vic Grimes. There's so many stories with that. Well, he always left the staples in with Vic and made it real. Well, we're sitting in the back, and he takes the staple and he pulls the plunger out and gets all the staples out and puts it back in, and we're good to go. And I thought he was going to staple my head. He told me he was going to staple my head or arm. Well, he gets caught up in the moment. He lays me down. He puts it on the head of my dick and hits it. And I'm thinking it's the plunger coming out that hit. And I immediately go into this excruciating pain. I look down, and it's like an inch and a half staple sticking out of the head of my dick. I'm screaming because it's like you get that excruciating pain, and then the pain's supposed to go away. Well, the pain never went away, and I am screaming. And the music's playing. Jack's dancing around. He's looking down at me. He's like, "Get up, C-Dub, next spot. Get up, C-Dub, next spot." I said, "Jack, you have stapled my dick." I said, "I cannot move." And he looks down, and when he sees it, he goes, "Oh my God!" He lays down beside me, and he's acting like he's selling, like I am, but he's actually laughing because I'm in so much pain. And I finally get it out, and I think he rolls me outside and power drives me from the apron to a table on the floor. But that's one of those. I mean, we did an interview last year together, all at ECW, and we talked about that story. He apologizes every time he sees me for that thing. I mean, it's just one of mine and Jack's road stories that we laugh about now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, New Jack, you mentioned Balls Mahoney. Who did you ride with from town to town in ECW? And you must have some tremendous road stories.
Oh man, my traveling clique was me and Steve Carino.
Okay.
We always rode because we always rode in like a Blazer or something along those lines. Steve and I would always ride in the back. Jack Victory would always drive. Louis Dangerously, Sign Glide would always in the passenger side, and then behind us in the next car was Francine and Tommy, or with Chetty and Dorian, and sometimes it was just Franny and Tommy. And that was our traveling clique. We went everywhere together. That's who we, stayed in, of course, same hotels, and that was my clique that we rode and had dinner with every night. And none of us were, I'm 28, 29 years old when I'm just getting there. None of us were drinkers. I mean, we drink a beer here and there, but most of the time it was get to the next town and go to sleep, or grab a pizza. Or if the red light was on at Krispy Kreme, we'd run your ass off the road to get one of them red donuts, hot light donuts. So that was my traveling clique, man. I mean, we had some funny road stories because I have a very, very weak stomach, and Tommy and Lou found it hilarious that they could make me throw up, or try to make me throw up every day with that.
Now you mentioned Tommy Dreamer, so let's talk about the feud with Tommy Dreamer. Whose idea was it to put you with Tommy Dreamer?
It was Tommy's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Tommy and I had gotten really close, and he was looking out for me. But November to remember, I think it's 2000. We're in Chicago the night Carino won the belt. I worked Kid Cash, and I was out there from pre-show all the way through my match. Simon and Swinger were first. We were out there in the pre-show doing something. Simon and Swinger were first with Christian and Joey. I was out there, and it would transpire right into me and Kid Cash. So when me and Cash were working, by the time we even started, I was blown up because I was doing spots the whole time. It was like I worked two matches before I got to Cash. So, me and Cash, it was airborne, what I call airborne versus infantry. So he was flying around. I was catching him doing crazy stuff. We get through the match, and I walk in the back. Tommy comes up to me. He goes, "CW, you are a hell of a talent, man. I can't wait to put you over on pay-per-view one day." And I thought that was a huge compliment. And then he started feuding with us. It was me and him against and Simon and Swinger against Christian and Joey and Tommy, or Tommy and Roadkill and Danny. It was back and forth. And then it was his idea to put me over at Massacre on 34th Street. His idea to take the spine buster with the table turned upside down and the legs up. And then the I Quit match was his brainchild for the finale.
Yeah, the I Quit match. One I Quit match that I can remember, Magnum TA against Tully Blanchard. Did you use that match as inspiration for your I Quit match with Tommy Dreamer?
Absolutely. I watched it. I can't tell you how many times I watched that preparing for it. I was doing cardio on my elliptical machine. I'd have that match playing because, Magnum was, before he got injured, was going to be a god here in the Mid-Atlantic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I watched that one. And, I love getting my I Quit match compared to that one. There's a lot of people that say my I Quit match and Magnum and Tully is just two of the best. And then you hear the marks from WWE that don't even talk about it. The newer generation is just not spoken of, but most of the people say they put my I Quit match over and they put it up there with one of the best that's been out there, which is a huge honor to be in the same category, being close to the same category as Magnum and Tully. So I consider that an honor.
Now, there's a question I've always wanted to ask you. I said, if I ever get C.W. Anderson on, I'm going to ask him this question. So I'm going to ask you now, when he had the cable around your eyes and he was pulling back, were your eyes ever in danger? Well, because they looked like they were really wrapped around your eyes and he was really yanking back on it.
He was pulling, because if you go back and listen to it, I can't say I quit because he takes my breath from me. Okay. He's pulling so hard. His cartilage is chipped right there.
Ow.
It's still from where he was pulling so hard. That spot was supposed to be barbed wire.
Oh my gosh.
And we couldn't, somebody had taken them off the ring trucks. And myself and Lou and Chili had walked around Manhattan that day looking for barbed wire. It was a Sunday and we couldn't find any. So we actually found some on somebody's garage or gate door, like chain link fence. And we kind of run back because the show's getting ready to start. And so we tell the musketeer, hey, at this intersection, take a left. There's barbed wire on this chain link fence. He takes off. 30 minutes later, he comes back. He says, CW, I have your barbed wire. And he pulls it out and it's razor wire. So the razor wire you see in the match is what he got. Yeah, okay. And when he pulls it out, it's all rusty and stuff. I said, Tommy, you're not putting that across my face. I'm not doing that. So he puts it in a circle.
I'm glad they didn't find the barbed wire. That would have been brutal.
Especially as hard as he was pulling. I think he did it because, it was rubber. It was around from the table. And I think he was I didn't know he was going to pull that damn hard, because when he wrapped it and cinched, I lost my breath. I mean, I didn't think I was going to be able to say I quit.
Yeah, I remember that brutal moment, man. And I know the feud happened at the tail end of ECW. Unfortunately, they folded. Do you kind of wish that feud went on a little longer than it did?
I do. I had a lot of fun working with Tommy, and Tommy being one of my closest friends there. And even today, Tommy, I still enjoy being in the ring with him, and we always have so much fun. But I think the feud was rushed because he wanted to get it in before it closed. We had no idea it was closing. Some of us did. I didn't. I was, oblivious, and I just didn't want it to believe it was true. But yeah, I wish that feud would have gone on a lot longer than what it did. I think the I Quit match could have been a lot more if it had been more of a build-up than what it was.
Okay, man. Did they ever talk about putting the ECW heavyweight title on you?
There was rumors, and Joey Styles would always mention about, I have the makings of a great champion. And the thing was, from what I was told, was living dangerously, because if I'm not, Rhino won the belt at Guilty as Charged. So he was vacating the television belt, and they were going to have a thing to where it was going to be me and Nova at Living Dangerously, and I was going to take the TV belt there and run with that for a while before I was whoever I was going to take the heavyweight belt from.
Okay, well, I gotta say, when I watched you in ECW, I was a big fan. You were fantastic in ECW, and after ECW, actually, you spent a lot of time in Japan for Pro Wrestling 01. So, how was that experience like in Japan, and what led you to Pro Wrestling 01?
What led me there was Corino. Everybody knows that Steve Corino and I have been best friends for 27 years, and he was already over there because he was the NWA champ, and they were looking for some more American wrestlers, and Steve had mentioned in the email one day to Nakamura, who was the booker, about CW Anderson. And somehow when Nakamura was reading the email, Masato Tanaka was was at the office and was reading it with him. And when he saw that, Tanaka was like, absolutely, yes, 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 please bring CW over. So when they decided for me to go over, I did my first tour was 2 weeks, 4 matches. My first match was against Nova and Frankie Kazarian. My second match was against Hashimoto and Fujiwara.
Okay, wow.
And when man, your second match in Japan and you're wrestling those two legends, and they are coming to the ring, and it's like Rock and Hogan walking down to the ring the way they were getting bombarded.
Yeah.
And all the boys in the back, all the Americans watched me, and they couldn't believe how I took it to Hashimoto because they're like, man, you didn't care if it was Hashimoto or not. And I didn't. I was in character. And that actually got me over with Hashimoto with my style and not being afraid of him. And so after that match, he looked at Nakamura and said, keep booking CW. And as far as being over there, the very first time I got over there and went in my hotel room, I was ready to come home because, you know, you're literally in a foreign country because, I mean, you can't read the signs. You can't speak the language. You don't know what the hell is going on. You don't even know where you're at. So I felt like I was on an alien planet.
Okay.
And, but Carino told me, he said, look, just give it a few days, give it a week. You'll get used to it. He said, and I promise you, you'll start enjoying being here. And that's about the first week. I started getting used to it. And then after that, man, I was hooked. I couldn't wait to come back. In that country, those people, the atmosphere, there or Australia, I would love to live my life.
Okay.
Those two places are amazing.
Now, Korakeun Hall, legendary building for professional wrestling. What was it like wrestling in that legendary building?
An honor. It got to a point where I was nicknamed the King of Korakeun Hall because I was so popular with all the Japanese fans. You know, Steve and I went back 5 years ago, and when Steve and I walk out, I still get the Anderson chant and the CW chant and stuff like that. And, you know, 15 years, I even said I was still over after 15 years. So Steve and I busted our ass in Korakeun Hall. We loved wrestling there. That was kind of like our home. It was our ECW arena, and just legendary knowing the people that have been through there, man. It was just crazy knowing the names of the legends that have wrestled in this place, and you're one of those.
Absolutely. Will you be heading back to Japan? I know you're still wrestling now, but any chance you're heading back?
I want to. I actually messaged Tanaka about coming back for the 20th anniversary, which was literally last week. But I don't think they had their 20th anniversary because of COVID. And Tanaka told me they weren't having it. They were going to wait till COVID was over with. And so I said, please just keep me in mind when y'all have it. I want to come back, and I want to take my fiance with me because I want her to experience that place as well.
Man, I hope you go back, man. I hope you go back, man.
I love it.
So you were in the WWE version of ECW for a short time. So what would you say are the main differences between the original ECW and the WWE ECW? I prefer the original ECW, but what do you think?
Most everybody does.
Yeah.
That I always call it a Disney version. It's
okay.
The only reason I signed is because I was under the impression that Tommy and Paul were going to be in charge and make the calls and stuff like that. You know, Vince had a gold mine, and he blew it because Vince he doesn't want anything getting over that's not his, that's not created by him. That's why he changes people's names. That's why he does the things he does. And the only reason he brought ECW back was to squash it, to show that his company was better, when in actuality, he had a gold mine with us. He could have kept us in the little arenas, the ECW arena, little places like that, and would have made a killing with us and let us do what we want to do. Let's do what we did best. But he couldn't do that. He couldn't keep his hands out of it. And then he started putting his guys in there, and it just totally killed it. It wasn't ECW. It was just a name, but that legend died a long time ago. And once he took it over, I was ready to quit. I was so glad the day they fired me. I did not want to be there. There was not one person that I know that was there from ECW that wanted to be there after it all happened. It was just a miserable experience for us to be there.
So is it fair to say you're not a fan of Vince McMahon?
Not a fan of his wrestling. I mean, he's created a billion-dollar industry, but he swallowed up all the territories and made it one conglomerate. And here's the thing. You can watch one TV show, but you're going to get bored of it. It needs diversity. It needs something different. And, you know, you could have let WCW stay, let ECW stay, let all these little territories stay. And it's competition. Fans get to pick and choose, and it's good for business. But he don't understand that. And I don't get in his brain why he can't grasp that concept.
Yeah, because I when I grew up, I had the NWA, AWA, WWF. I had Georgia Championship Wrestling, Mid Atlantic Championship Wrestling. I would get Florida Championship Wrestling, and I loved it all. I mean, I again from Queens, New York, but I much prefer having it with all the territories than it is today. I
Yeah,
know now you have the WWE, you have AEW, you have Impact, but wrestling was so much better when I was growing up, in my opinion.
you're exactly right. If during our area, so much to choose from. You could, if you didn't feel like the NWA style, you could watch Georgia Championship Wrestling. You could
Yeah,
flip to the WWE when they were a little more children, a little more cartoony. Everybody got their own choice. And that's a great thing about wrestling. If you do, Jack Victory told me years ago, if you go to a wrestling show, you have an old school match, you have a high flying match, you have a hardcore match, you have a women's match, you have a tag match. You're giving each wrestling fan what they like. Somebody likes one thing better than they do the other. And that's how you give fans a wrestling show. You can't, that shit on TV now, it's all the same stuff from AEW to WWE. It's the same thing. And that's why people, and it's not just me saying this, it's everybody. You can't find hardly anybody that sits there and say, oh man, this is the greatest thing ever, because it's not. Some things need to change. You got to give them a little bit of everything.
Absolutely, man. And speaking of legends, you were in the ring with Dusty Rhodes. You went one-on-one with Dusty Rhodes. What was it like being in the ring with Dusty Rhodes? That must have been something, standing in the ring and your opponent is Dusty Rhodes.
I got really close to Dusty when he was running his TCW promotion down in Georgia. And I remember the first time I wrestled him one-on-one. We were in a bull rope match, and it was an Anderson versus a Rhodes. And the crowd, it's an old school wrestling crowd. There's 400 or 500 people there, and they're all going crazy. And Dusty's doing his dance and his stuff and his electricity. And they're hooking me up and got the cowbell in the middle, strapping me up. And I'm big bad CW Anderson on the outside.
Yeah.
I look across, and I went, holy shit. On the inside, I'm 12-year-old, 14-year-old Chris Wright going, oh my God, I'm in the ring with Dusty Rhodes.
Oh, yeah, man.
So being in the ring with him, God, it was so much fun. He was so easy. And I remember that first match, and he told me to get the heat. He wanted me to hit him with a cowbell, and I smoked him with it by accident. And as he goes down, he holds his head. He goes, God damn, CW Arn never hit me this hard. I was apologizing the entire match to him. But being in the ring with him, I've worked tag matches and all kinds of things, man. He was so much fun. I really missed that guy.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorites. Like I said, I literally wanted my dad to drive me down to Atlanta so I could chase after Ollie Anderson after Ollie Anderson turned on him, man. So whose idea was it for the Extreme Horseman? Who came up with that idea? And tell me about you in the War Games match. Tell me about that match as well.
Steve Simon and I kind of had something like this at ECW. We wanted to do something like this, and it wasn't until we got to TCW. Dusty set Steve and I down one day because Dusty had all his friends with him that was there. It was Barry, Dusty came in, Manny Fernandez, Mike Graham, guys like that. Dusty set myself and Carino and Barry Windham down one day and goes, I have this idea for you three to calling you the Extreme Horseman. He said, Barry, you came from the Horsemen. Steve, you and CW came from the Extreme. And I figured it'd be a nice little playoff to Four Horsemen. And we kind of run with it. So, we did it. The night we introduced it was Steve and I were wrestling Dustin and Dusty. We handcuffed Dustin to the ropes and we're beating Dusty. Now, this is an old school Georgia crowd. We're down near Valdosta. And it's so old where I remember kicking a woman in the face to keeping her out of the ring. They were trying to come in the ring. About that time, they start sending the boys from the back. And Steve and I are beating them off. And about the last person to come down was Barry. Barry comes in, cleans house. Steve and I powder. He's looking around. He's helping Dusty up, big hug. And the next thing you know, he waffles Dusty with a chair. And then he waffles Dustin with it. And we get in and beat the crap out of them. And we're having to be escorted to the back. And one of the guys that was security was in on the rib. He was a trainee or he'd been wrestling. So he knew. And he gets in Barry Windham's face. And Barry headbutts him and breaks his nose.
Oof.
And Barry looks at us and goes, I guess he'll never do that again. He kind of smirks about it. Holy shit. So we did that for a while. And then when MLW come around, Court let Steve, Simon, and I basically do our own thing. He would have an idea, or Steve and I would have ideas with Simon, and Court loved it. He let us do pretty much what we wanted to, but he did want us to beat up the legends. And it was his idea to have the War Games match. So that was Court's brainchild, and Steve and Simon and I, we had our own promo ideas and things like that. So then we got in there with Terry Funk and Sabu and Sandman for War Games. I can't remember where Dusty was for that, why he didn't make it. I know they were going to do Jerry the King of Lawler, and he couldn't make it.
Okay.
But I remember jumping Terry Funk before the show started, and Terry had barbed wire wrapped around his hand, and he was like swinging at us and hitting us in the side of the face. And Terry was crazy as hell. I was scared to death of Terry. Still am. And if you go back and watch any of that War Games, you see me run from Terry, because he comes over one time, Sandman's choking me with his shirt. I'm trying to get away because I knew Terry's getting ready to come beat my ass. And he hits me in the face with barbed wire, and then he takes the kendo stick and was beating me like my dad used to. And you see me run and jump through the second row to get away from him. So the War Games was, man, it was so much fun. There's a spot in there where, because somebody asked me this about a couple weeks ago. They said, what was Sandman saying to you when he was going around in a circle? I kicked him, and he started going around in a circle, and he was going, curly shuffle, curly shuffle. So you see me turn around and walk off because I'm laughing.
I was wondering that also. I'm glad you brought that up, because I was thinking about that when I was watching the match. So you said curly shuffle, and you just
curly shuffle. You see me, I turn around and walk off. I'm laughing.
Oh man! So all right, so I got one more question, and then we can wrap this up. What was your all-time favorite match that you've ever had? Was it Tommy Dreamer, the I Quit match? What was your all-time favorite match?
I got a few, man, that I really can't decide between. These are really good for fans to go back and watch. One you can't watch. It was me and Masato Tanaka from Japan. For a television title, we have 4,000 people on their feet. Steve Corino and Brian Kidrick and Loki were my seconds that night, and I like split my hand all the way through right here, and Tanaka knocked me out on the finish. My I Quit is right there.
Yeah.
Probably the top. But last year, right before COVID hit, I did a program with George South, and it was a 4-match program to where we finished it with an I Quit match. And on YouTube, if you search C.W. Anderson and AML Wrestling is a huge promotion here in North Carolina. They're the ones that run the huge event at Thanksgiving called WrestleCade. But AML called it the second greatest story ever told. The thumbnail is George South bloodied on the front. And it's our 4 matches with promos and stuff leading up to the I Quit match. And those are some of my favorite, because none of those matches was called in the back. Everything was called in the ring. We didn't do one move out of the 80s. George called every spot in there, and I just listened. And he tells me till today, he still prays for that I Quit match, because it was one of his favorite matches ever. He said, "See, I've been in the ring with Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat." He said, "You're one of the best I've ever been in the ring with."
Wow.
He said, "Those are my favorite matches, especially the I Quit." Wow. So if you get a chance, YouTube, C.W. Anderson, AML Wrestling, it's the second greatest story ever told. It's about 2.5 hours. Okay. And it's some amazing matches, man. It's really good.
Okay, I will make sure I definitely watch that. So before we wrap this up, is there anything you want to plug? Do you have any merchandise? Anything you want to plug? Feel free.
Everything. Everything I've got is on as ECW Anderson, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and then you can see my fiance Brittany Marie, who's my valet. She's on there. She has her own website. I have T-shirts. I got all kinds of new things. And anything you see that's my new artwork, that can be made a T-shirt. So if anybody wants a T-shirt, all I gotta do is direct message me. If you just want to say hello, direct message me. I'm on Cameo as well. If you want some kind of shout out that way. But for everybody that's always been a fan of mine, I've always said this: whether you love me or hated me, man, you always kept your hands high for C-Dub. So I appreciate every one of you guys for all the years and the booing and cheering you did for me, because it made me go out there and give you 110%.
Can you give me a C.W. Anderson? Can you give me one of those?
I can do one.
There we go, man. All right.
It hurt
All
and
right.
everything, man. I did it for you.
Okay, there you go. CW, first of all, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you so much for the memories you've given me. I've seen you multiple times live at ECW. So it's a pleasure talking to you today, and I wish you nothing but the best of luck in the future, my friend.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure, man. Well, this has been the Alliance Pro Wrestling Network Sunday special interview. I'm your host, Lewis Carlin. Again, want to thank my guest, C.W. Anderson. Until next time, thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye. Stay safe, everyone. So long. Bye-bye.